Hello, podheads. Welcome back to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. I'm Kylie Colwell,
This is Kate Carter.
and I have emergently brought Kate out of maternity leave because Holly was unavailable, but I'm glad she's here.
These girls gave me, what did I get? 2 weeks? 2 weeks off? I'll take it.
We have to put her to work.
I didn't even get, it was so quick. I didn't even get a chance to listen to the episode that you guys released.
You'll have homework later. Okay, jumping right in and setting the scene. It's 1985 in South Los Angeles, California. Not exactly a glorious period for the city. The crack epidemic was rampant, and the city was riddled with crime. One of the biggest crimes people were talking about was the Night Stalker, a serial killer who took the lives of at least 15 people. But what the city didn't know was that there were more than one serial killer on the prowl in LA, and one of these killers, the LA Police Department, didn't publicly acknowledge until 2008. 24 years after the first murder, and at least 25 victims later, the killer had a name: the Grim Sleeper. In 1985, the LAPD began to notice a pattern. 13 women had been found stabbed or strangled in only the past 2 years. All of the women were Black and mainly drug users and or sex workers. But the police didn't say anything to the public, not a plea for tips, and definitely not a warning that there was possibly a serial killer targeting Black women in the area. The public did notice, though, and local Black activists began to protest outside of the LAPD headquarters on almost a daily basis, demanding that a task force be formed to investigate the murders. They raised great points. The LAPD was all over the Night Stalker case, with the killer Richard Ramirez targeting white victims in upscale neighborhoods, a stark contrast to the Black sex workers on the South Side, who were being ignored. Eventually, the LAPD did quietly put together what they called the South Side Slayer Task Force, and by January 1986, 15 murders were linked to one another. But by 1987, the task force was exponentially downsized, with the reasons or excuses being given that the cost and manpower was not worth the lack of movement in the case. They did make some progress, though, and were able to link victims to 5 different serial killers with different MOs and suspect descriptions.
God damn.
5 in one area.
I feel like I'd be moving out of that area.
Oh, for sure. So, 2 of the murders were attributed to Louis Crane, who was convicted of 4 rapes and murders in LA from 1985 to 1987. One victim was attributed to each of 4 other serial killers. Michael Hughes was connected to 4 murders, Daniel Siebert, 5. Chester Turner had 15, and 8 for Ivan Hill. The LAPD deemed the group of unconnected but similar serial killers the Southside Slayers. But still, there was a long list of homicide victims who couldn't be connected to these 5. Sure, there was always the possibility that some of the victims weren't murdered by a serial killer, but by a pimp, a client, a loved one, etc. But there was still a list of victims with glaring similarities, a clear MO, and pattern. The first victim, Sharon Dismuke, was found dead on the floor of a men's bathroom in an abandoned gas station on January 5th, 1984. The 21-year-old had been shot. On August 10th, 1985, 29-year-old Deborah Jackson was found under a carpet in the alley behind West Gage Avenue. She had been shot 3 times in the chest. A year and 2 days later, under a mattress in the alley of West Vernon Avenue, was 35-year-old Henrietta Wright. Like Sharon and Deborah, she had been shot multiple times, but this time it was thought she had been killed elsewhere and later dumped due to the lack of blood at the scene. Another 2 days later, we have our only male victim, 36-year-old Thomas Steele, who was found at the intersection of 71st Street and Halldale Avenue. Thomas's murder was connected to the others by the murder weapon. And clearly, Thomas didn't fit the victim type of a Black woman, but police theorize he either knew a victim, intervened during an attack, or discovered the killer in some way. There were 3 more victims in 1987. 23-year-old Barbara Ware was found on East 56th Street. 26-year-old Bernita Sparks was found in a trash bin on Southwestern Avenue. And 26-year-old Mary Lowe was discovered covered up in an alley on Western Avenue. Investigators also connected 3 more victims in the following year: 22-year-old Latricia Jefferson, 18-year-old Inez Warren, and 18-year-old Alicia Alexander. All the victims had been shot with a .25 caliber firearm in the chest at a close range, dumped in alleys on LA's South Side. While the other Southside Slayers had victims in the area, none of them had used this type of firearm. Investigators were also able to connect the murder of Deborah Jackson and Henrietta Wright with a forensic firearm examination, conclusively linking the victims to the exact same gun.
This is a lot of victims so far. I feel like I should have been counting. Are we past 10?
We are. Yeah, we are only at 1988,
Wonderful.
but that's all investigators had. The first time DNA was used in a United States criminal court system was in 1986, but the technology obviously wasn't what it is today. And from what I could gather, it doesn't seem like any was really found or collected at any of these crime scenes or from the victims' bodies. It just wasn't quite common practice yet. A break in the case would come. One woman survived an attempted murder by the Grim Sleeper, but investigators did nothing with the information she was able to provide.
Love that. What? I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised.
So on November 20th, 1988, 30-year-old Anitra Washington was walking to a friend's house when the Grim Sleeper pulled up in his orange Ford Pinto. Anitra declined his offer for a ride, and that's when the man responded with, quote, "That's what's wrong with you black women. People can't be nice to you," end quote. Anitra was stunned, and she thought, you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong. I'll get in the car.
Hell no.
The weirdest part of all this, he's talking about this is what's wrong with black women. The man is black.
So, yeah.
But they start driving, and Anitra said they were having a friendly conversation. All was well. He stopped at a house for about 10 minutes, explaining he needed to pick up some money from his uncle. When he got back to the car, his demeanor was completely different. He was angry and agitated, yelling at Anitra and calling her by a different name. All of a sudden, before she could even see a gun, Anitra had been shot in the chest. The man sped off and continued to drive until Anitra lost consciousness. She woke up hours later to him on top of her, assaulting her. Afterwards, the man pushed her out onto the street and drove off. Anitra suffered a collapsed lung, but she somehow was able to crawl to her friend's house that she was going to. So they were going to meet at her friend's house and go to a party. She makes it to the friend's house. The friends went to the party, and she just was laying there until her friend got back and could call 911.
The fact that she didn't die is mind blowing.
Insane.
Yeah.
When investigators met with her, she described her attacker, saying he was, quote, "a black man in his early 30s. He looked neat, tidy, kind of geeky. He wore a black polo shirt tucked into khaki trousers," end quote. She described his orange Ford Pinto and told police where his uncle's house was. But Anitria never heard back from the police. No updates in her case whatsoever. She said that during her interview, one of the LAPD detectives suggested she must have been a sex worker, and that's why she got into the car.
You're not a sex worker. And they're like, oh, you must be. You're like, no, I'm not. An orange Ford Pinto is pretty specific. And you would think they would take that information and run with it, you know?
You would think. They also collected the bullet that was in her lung, and they forensically linked it to all the other murders, but they never told Anitria this.
And they have the house that he stopped at.
Yep. So she didn't learn that she was almost killed by a serial killer until decades later.
That's crazy.
And you may be wondering where the Grim Sleeper name comes from, and we are at that point in the story because this guy went on a 12-year hiatus without a confirmed or even likely victim.
Okay. When shit like that happens, this is my question to you, Kylie.
Mhm.
Do you think that they actually are on a hiatus, or do you think they've changed their MO? They've moved somewhere else? Like, I personally, if you had to ask me, don't think they're on hiatuses. I think it's just a completely changed story. Like I just don't understand that they would go that long and then start up again.
Oh, we will get to all of that later.
Okay,
There's lots of theories.
good.
But for now, in this 12-year period, it seems the problem was no longer a concern of the LAPD. They couldn't catch the guy, but he seems to have stopped. So there's no more problem. But on December 28th, 2000, the murders started again. 43-year-old Georgia Thomas was found shot to death in South Park. 35-year-old Valerie McCorvey was found in July of 2003 on Dinker Avenue. And 25-year-old Janisha Peters was found in a garbage bag in a dumpster on Southwestern Avenue in 2007. Investigators were able to collect DNA from saliva on the garbage bag, which matched DNA found at the scene of Valerie McCorvey's murder. The DNA also matched samples collected from the 2002 murder of 15-year-old Princess Berthomew. Princess's nude body was found in Inglewood Alley. Her case wasn't originally connected to the other murders because Princess hadn't been shot. She had been strangled and beaten. So without this DNA connection, it might have never been connected. Now, with the killer striking again, the LAPD was forced to investigate. But again, they did this in secret and never publicly confirmed there was a serial killer on the loose. In 2007, they formed the 800 Task Force, composed of 6 detectives to apprehend the Grim Sleeper. A year later, the city of Los Angeles finally confirmed there was a serial killer and announced a $500,000 reward for information leading to his conviction, which is quite a bit.
That's a shitload of money. That's also a lot of money for just now publicly coming forward that there's a serial killer.
So, a few months after this announcement, the case was featured on America's Most Wanted, but once again, no further movement. On February 25th, 2009, police held their first press conference regarding the case, formally giving the killer the nickname Grim Sleeper. They also released a 911 call from the 80s from a man reported seeing a deceased woman being pushed out of a van. The caller did note the license plate number of the van, which was connected to the Cosmopolitan Church, which had since closed. So this was kind of a dead end, which it wasn't closed at the time he made the call. And they never went to the church to find out who had been driving the van.
You have the license plate. Like, that's mind blowing to me.
Exactly. In March of 2009, police finally went back and interviewed survivor Anitra Washington, telling her for the first time she survived an attack by the Grim Sleeper. Unfortunately, no new information came up and no new witnesses came forward. But in 2010, investigators decided to try out familial DNA testing after an exact match didn't pull up in CODIS. They were able to say the killer was someone related to Christopher Franklin, whose DNA was entered after a felony weapons charge in 2008. Christopher was too young to have committed the murders, so they started to build a family tree, and they landed on his father, Lonnie Franklin. Lonnie was the right age, 58 at the time. He also lived in the 10-block radius of South Los Angeles where all the bodies were discovered. To be sure, detectives followed Lonnie around, and when he stopped for lunch, one of the detectives pretended to be a busboy and collected like all of his dishes and leftover food from the table.
That's great.
And just like with the Long Island serial killer, it was saliva from the pizza crust that they used to confirm he was the guy.
You guys, this is why you eat your pizza crust.
People that don't eat the crust, I genuinely I have disdain for.
I'll go and eat the crust.
That's the best part, to be honest. It's bread. You don't like bread?
Like, come on. What are you
And
worried about calories? You just ate pizza.
we're going on a tangent. Sorry, we're very passionate about pizza here. So, who was Lonnie Franklin? At the time, he seemed like a normal grandpa. His neighbors described him as friendly and always out front working on cars. He was a retired garbage collector and at one time was a mechanic for the LAPD themselves.
Hmm.
Sometimes it'd be one of your own.
Yeah, sometimes it be.
But what most people didn't know is that Lonnie had a troubling criminal history. In 2003, Lonnie was convicted of felony possession of stolen property and was sentenced to 3 years probation. The following year, California passed Proposition 69, requiring that DNA be collected from those convicted of certain felonies. This was later expanded to include all felonies. So at the time they start collecting DNA, Lonnie has his felony, but his crime wasn't included on the original list. So it was only like violent felonies. His DNA wasn't collected until 2005 due to delays and a lack of resources. And frustratingly, after collection, Lonnie's DNA, for whatever reason, wasn't uploaded into CODIS. So we could have saved at least 5 years of investigation and 4 victims.
That's really shit.
Even more frustratingly and concerning, Lonnie was convicted of kidnapping and rape, and no one in the United States knew about it. In July of 1975, while stationed as part of the U.S. Army in Germany, Lonnie, along with 2 other soldiers, kidnapped and gang raped a 17-year-old girl. They also took photos of their victim before leaving her out in a field. Lonnie was dishonorably discharged from the Army and served 3 years and 4 months in prison in Germany. But then after that, he went and lived a somewhat normal life back in LA. His only other conviction in the US was for theft in 1989. So he wasn't exactly on police's radar, but he sure is now with the DNA match. On July 7th, 2010, after 26 years of terror, Lonnie Franklin was arrested and held without bail on 10 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. He was officially charged with the murders of Deborah Jackson, Henrietta Wright, Barbara Ware, Bernita Sparks, Mary Lowe, Latricia Jefferson, Alicia Alexander, Princess Berthomew, Valerie McCorvey, and Janicia Peters, along with the attempted murder of Anitria Washington. During and following the arrest of the Grim Sleeper, investigators spent weeks searching his home and collecting evidence. In the backyard garage was a photo of the lone survivor, Anitria Washington. The murder weapon, the 25 caliber firearm, was found in the master bedroom. On December 16th, 2010, the LAPD released 180 of the over 1,000 photos of women they found in Lonnie's house.
Can you imagine? Like, what if you're one of those? Oh my God.
Yeah,
Also, he had a picture of the survivor.
he did.
I can't remember, but when he attacked her, does he think that she had died or no?
Yeah, he thought she was dead.
To have that many pictures in his home, are they all victims?
That's what the police are trying to find out. So the photos showed Black women of all age ranges, mostly in the nude, and most of the women being unconscious in the photos. So they released the photos in hopes that the public would be able to identify more victims. From this initial release, 35 women were identified. 6 of these women were confirmed to have been or thought to have been murdered by Lonnie, and the others were found to be safe and sound. So he didn't murder every victim.
But these women had all been injured by him somehow.
I believe at least assaulted.
And this was all in the same town.
This is all in a 10-block radius of LA.
I'm sorry, the LAPD fucked up this case. That is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Don't come for me, LAPD. You guys are actually massive.
Also, in Lonnie's home, investigators found a plethora of women's necklaces, rings, earrings, and watches he kept as trophies. Lonnie Franklin's trial began on February 16th, 2016, and closed on May 2nd, 2016, after lengthy delays. The lead prosecutor, Beth Silverman, closed with the following quote: "These crimes were about power and control. It is clear the defendant got pleasure from killing these young women because that's how they all ended up. He definitely wanted to degrade these women by dumping their bodies like trash. He got off on that too, and that is why he did it over and over. It gave him gratification." End quote. Finally, on May 5th, 2016, Lonnie Franklin was convicted on all counts after a day and a half of jury deliberation. On May 12th, the sentencing hearing began, and prosecutors presented evidence that Lonnie had committed even more murders. These victims weren't able to be connected with DNA or ballistic evidence prior to the trial. They were sort of able to be connected during discovery and trial prep, and the prosecutors explained that they didn't want to delay the trial even further, so that's why they weren't bringing them up until now. Weird thought process, but okay.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
18-year-old Ayala Marshall was last seen on February 1st, 2005. She has never been located, but her school ID card was found in Lonnie's garage. 31-year-old Rolenia Morris similarly went missing in September of 2005, with her Nevada's driver's license and nude photos being found in the garage. She has also not been located. Investigators were also able to conclusively link Lonnie to other murders I talked about earlier: Sharon Dismuke, Inez Warren, and Georgia Thompson. After all of this, on June 6, 2016, Lonnie Franklin was sentenced to death. But after only 4 years on death row, on March 28th, 2020, 67-year-old Lonnie Franklin was found dead in his cell at San Quentin State Prison.
Did he kill himself?
Get this, they have never released his cause of death or autopsy report.
Are you kidding me? So we don't know if he killed himself or if he died of like a heart attack.
Nope. The only thing they said is that there was no signs of trauma.
No signs of trauma makes me think it was like natural.
Why haven't you said he died of natural causes? Why be weird about it?
Why be weird about it? Also, San Quentin's like hardcore.
Notoriously hardcore. So after decades of terror, Lonnie only served 4 years for his crimes. He also left behind a lot of questions, mainly regarding his 12-year hiatus. Obviously, it's very uncommon for a serial killer to take long, unexplained breaks. Like, sure, if they're in prison, but Lonnie was only on probation for a few years, and even then, he was killing victims during this time. Really, the only time serial killers have gone long periods without killing are in cases like BTK or Israel Keys, who were very methodical and oddly calm about their crimes. The Grim Sleeper, on the other hand, was more of a random, violent killer. He just drove around and offered rides to anyone. He wasn't stalking victims or planning out the attacks. He was also getting progressively more violent. He started out shooting his victims in the chest at close range and later progressed to strangling and beating them. He also kept photos and trophies from his victims, all of this showing a strong urge, not someone who could wait. So, of course, the big question, was there even a hiatus at all?
I say no.
So, let's get into some victims we talked about who have been attributed to the Grim Sleeper, but not with 100% certainty and without a conviction. So, these are some of the victims who haven't been ruled in or out. These next four victims are all considered missing. No bodies have been located as of yet. All four were also involved in drug use, prostitution, and frequented that 10-block radius around Lonnie's house where he struck. So they fit his pattern to a T, but that's all we have. 32-year-old Catherine Davis was last seen on June 9th, 1982, in the 400 block of 49th Street. 26-year-old Rosalind Giles was last seen on 64th Street on January 10th, 1991. 28-year-old Lisa Knox was last seen on May 11th, 1993 on 22nd. And 37-year-old Anita Parker was last seen on Brenhurst Avenue on November 17th, 1998. A fifth victim on the list, often attributed to the Grim Sleeper, was very recent, less than a month before his arrest. On May 16th, 2010, 19-year-old Edwinta Hereford was found dead on the 105 freeway in Paramount. It was determined that an hour prior to discovery, Edwinta had been pushed from a speeding car. Her cause of death was severe blunt force trauma. The Grim Sleeper was known to push victims from his car, but this would be the only one that was done on a freeway, not on a side street or alley. The main reason Edwinta is considered a potential victim is that she was last seen at Snappy's liquor store in Westmont, which was within that 10-block radius. Edwinta Hereford's case still remains unsolved, and the Grim Sleeper's involvement is also up for debate. Another explanation for the hiatus is that maybe Lonnie Franklin was also an entirely differently named serial killer in a different country. Between 1998 to 2000, the murders of 5 girls rocked the country of Belize. The murders were tied to one serial killer, which remains the country's greatest cold case. It started on September 8th, 1998, when 13-year-old Shirley Nicholas went missing while walking to school. A little over a month later, her body was found in a pool of water near George Price Highway. Shirley had been stabbed over 40 times in the head and chest. One of her arms had been almost cut off, and her face was cut open. She also showed signs of sexual assault. The most disturbing part of Shirley's case was that she was not found in her clothes. She was wearing the clothes of 9-year-old Jay Blades, who had gone missing 2 days prior.
What kind of twisted story is this? I feel like you could have done an episode on just this Belize killer.
Yeah.
Ugh, that's so creepy.
Yep. Jay Blade's skull and a few of her bones were found 6 months later in a similar area. On March 23rd, 1999, 12-year-old Jackie Malik went missing from her school's playground during recess. 2 days later, her body was found face down in a puddle in the same area as Shirley Nicholas. Jackie had been stabbed multiple times, her left arm severed, and it is believed she may have also been run over by a car.
Taken from recess?
Where were the teachers? Next one is 8-year-old Erica Wills. She was last seen on June 26, 1999, but her disappearance went unnoticed for 3 days. Apparently, she was supposed to be going to a relative's that day. She didn't show up, and the relative just assumed she wasn't coming over. There was some miscommunication or lack of communication, I guess.
There was no communication.
No.
Oh my God, 3 days of the kid just not being around and people did not realize. That's mad thing.
On July 18th, her skeletal remains are located behind a quarry in Gracie Rock. Lastly, 14-year-old Noemi Hernandez went missing while running an errand on February 15th, 2000. 9 days later, her body was found on a sandy mound along the Belize River. She also suffered multiple stab wounds to the face and neck. Reports also say several body parts were missing, but they didn't specify which. Obviously, these crimes were gruesome and quite shocking. Five young girls brutally kidnapped, murdered, and dumped like trash. The entire country of Belize was in an absolute panic, and the national government imposed a curfew for children and placed guards at every school. Tips and leads were few and far between. The only thing that kind of stuck were reports of a man wearing stockings as a mask driving a red car. In the medical examiner's office, a bit more information was ascertained. All of the girls had alcohol and drugs in their system, something obviously the young girls would not have had unless supplied by their killer. In addition, the blade used in all five murders was the exact same. It was believed that the killer or killers had a medical background due to the precision of the cuts. And yes, I said killer or killers because it hasn't been ruled out that this could be the work of more than one person. So before we get to Lonnie Franklin's connection, let's talk about the one guy who has actually been arrested. Michael Williams was arrested for the murder of Jackie Malik, the second victim, after being seen offering her a ride, which Jackie had declined. Michael also lived a couple doors down. So Michael was brought in and only released when Erica Wills disappeared while he was in custody, proving he wasn't the guy. The only other named guy brought up in this case is our own Lonnie Franklin, aka the Grim Sleeper. So first we'll get into why he's tied to the case, and then we'll get into some discrepancies because there's always something. To start, Lonnie's wife Sylvia was from Belize and immigrated to the US decades before these murders. I'm not exactly sure when they married, but it is known that the two would go back to Belize to visit her family who are still there. In fact, Sylvia's sister reported that Lonnie was, in fact, in Belize during the time of the Belize Ripper murders, which coincides with the break in the LA murders. There are other unconfirmed reportings of sightings of Lonnie in town as well. The biggest proof that Lonnie was there came after his arrest in LA when they found one of his vans in Belize. But that's all we have. A serial killer who happened to be in another country, plagued with a serial killer who happened to have taken a so called break during these other murders. Was it just a coincidence?
I don't know. I don't know about this one. The MO is completely different.
So the victims in LA were Black women aged 15 to 35. Obviously, the victims in Belize were preteen and young girls. The victims in LA were dumped in alleys and on the street or sidewalks. The victims in Belize were dumped in or near water. In LA, the victims weren't stabbed and no body parts were severed or taken, like in Belize. So it'd be one thing for a killer's MO and victim pool to change and evolve, get darker, more gruesome as he continues to kill. But with Lonnie, when he starts killing in LA again, he returns to what he had always done. He didn't
Right.
evolve.
Yeah.
The biggest reason why I don't think Lonnie is also the Belize Ripper is DNA. In 2022, Belize opened a lab dedicated solely to solving the country's cold cases. In the opening of this lab, a reporter confirmed that in the case of the Belize Ripper, there was a DNA profile of the killer. It has now been almost 4 years since this announcement, and Lonnie Franklin nor anyone else has been a confirmed match for the profile. Sources are scarce on this information, but I would assume and hope that by now, Lonnie's DNA on file in the US would have been compared.
You would think, but
You would think, but sometimes they just don't.
they just don't.
I could not find any confirmation that it was tested. So all I know is that the case of the Belize Ripper is still open and still cold.
That's so sad.
There could be logical reasons for the break, like medical reasons. Maybe he was physically incapable for some time. Maybe he did change his pattern for some time, like changing his dumping grounds. Internet sleuths also point to the fact that Lonnie worked as a garbage collector during this time, providing plenty of opportunities for alternate grounds. Maybe other victims, some we may not even know the names of, haven't been positively connected to him yet. Or maybe he did just stop for a bit. Either way, one thing is clear in this case. When investigators ignored the public's call for help in apprehending a serial killer targeting their community, try to cover up the fact that there even is a serial killer, and then delay collecting and testing DNA, more lives are taken. And that was the story of the serial killer you may have never heard of, one responsible for likely more than 25 murders, the Grim Sleeper.
I definitely think more than 25 for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Also, him working as a garbage collector makes me very suspicious.
Go search the dumps.
Have we not? Like, that's nuts.
Every case when someone could possibly have been dumped at a dump and they have to go search it, and they're like, it's too much work. Why is there not a police officer at every dump?
Or canine
Put a cadaver dog at every dump.
would make a lot of sense.
Okay, wait, actually, that needs to happen.
This could be a business opportunity.
Guys, we're gonna lobby for cadaver dogs at dumps.
We're going to train our own cadaver dogs. Our business name is going to be Dump Sniffers. That sounds really bad, actually. Never mind.
That was disgusting. Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
dump sniffers is not a good one. I feel like there's a shitload of more victims in this story. I don't think he's connected to the Belize girls. I'd be really shocked if that ever came out. And I would love to know if he killed himself or died of natural causes in jail, in prison.
we have a lot of questions. I need answers.
LAPD, kind of shocked by your behavior of this case. Usually you guys do a little bit better than the some of your other offices.
I mean, I hate to say it, but I think if they weren't sex workers, they might have investigated.
Yep. Sounds about right. And it was in the time where lots of sex workers, nobody gave a shit.
LA in the 80s and 90s was not a good time.
Even if you weren't a sex worker, if you were just a female and black.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Damn, man. I had never heard of this one. Crazy.
Happy Monday, listeners. Okay, we're going to jump into overtime.
Overtime.
We did announce that you had a child
I gave birth
again.
again for the second time. This time, I actually gave birth instead of having a tiny human pulled from my stomach.
Was it worth it?
1000%. I would
Okay,
do it all over again to go through natural labor over a C-section. The recovery was a million times better.
okay, the pain during the actual pushing
Can't
on a
feel
scale
it.
of
Zero.
not a thing.
Not a single. Get the epidural, ladies. Get the epidural. Look, when I gave birth to Millie, I had pushed with Millie, ended up with a C-section. The girls know that emergency C-section. The recovery for the C-section was got hell, absolute hell. I was on my deathbed for like a month, couldn't move, couldn't do anything. I got to push, but still had to have the C-section. So this time around, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna push again, but we all thought I was gonna end up with a C-section. I pushed that baby right out within an hour. Did phenomenal. It was great. I watched myself give birth in a mirror.
That's disgusting.
I love blood and gore and shit like that, but it was very surreal to see that occur. But I will say the epidural was the worst part of my first birth. It was so painful. This time around, I gave a heads up to the epidural dude. I was like, look, I just want to let you know I about died last time I had an epidural. So he like talked me through it. It was so much better. It's still really painful. The needle is like 10 feet long and horrible. But once you get the epidural, you're flying. Okay, you're not high, but your body feels like it's high. You can't feel a single freaking thing. It's nuts. I can't explain it to you unless you've had it done before, but like you're pushing and you don't feel anything. The hardest part of birthing a baby is the breath work you have to do.
I kind of want one. Like, I don't want to
You
give birth, but
can't, like, you can't feel a single thing.
I wonder if there's some shady doctor out there that will give me an epidural.
Dude, it hurts. It hurts. Don't get me wrong. And I'm accustomed to pain. So like, do I take it well? Probably not. But it's a long ass needle that then you have to so you do it while you're contracting. So you're going through like a big contraction and you're already like, ugh, and they have you bent over and then they just stick it in your spine and it's a few minute process. So like it hurts for a little while, but then whoo, I was like not feeling my legs for a good 30 hours. Belly button down. Actually, honestly, probably boobies down. Boobies down. So couldn't feel a single thing. People had to lift up my legs and move me. Like it's like if you're sitting on the toilet for too long and your body goes numb and then you try to get up, times it by like 50.
That sounds awesome.
You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. So like that's my biggest takeaway for everybody is like everything you read or listen to or watch on movies and stuff like that about giving birth and people are screaming, those bitches didn't take any medicine. Okay. Take your meds. If you want to do it without meds, kudos to you. I've got friends. Shout out to my girl Francesca. She did not take any medicine. She didn't get an epidural. She also like coughed a few times and that baby flew out. So Could have been a different experience, but not me. Drug me up. I want to be high. I want to be euphoric.
So, like Holly says, take me to the moon.
Take me to the goddamn moon. And it was wonderful. So recovery
Okay,
wise, I mean, look, I'm 2.5 weeks post having a baby and I'm recording. Didn't do that with the first one. I think I was out for like 3 months.
question. Since your first birth was so traumatic, is the
Mm.
second baby currently the favorite?
No.
Good mom
No,
answer.
no, because you know how obsessed I am with Millie. So I actually still, postpartum brain and shit like that. Like it takes like 2 years or whatever for me to get back to myself, like, or any woman to get back to themselves after having babies. But your hormones are so effed up. I cry every day when I don't physically see Millie for like an hour. Like Millie's taking a nap right now. I'm probably going to cry after we get off this episode because I want to go wake her up for no reason.
Guys, Kate is a really good mom.
It's for no reason. Who would have thunk too? Not I. Not that I wouldn't have been a good mom, but like could have done life without children and then decided a few years ago that I wanted to be a mom and it's so much fun.
Kate is like the definition of mom.
Yeah, I've always been the mom of a group though, you know.
Yeah, but you never cried over me like that.
I've cried over you a few times, Kylie. I just haven't told you.
Oh, that makes me feel better. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, you've got a new person in your life. I've cried over that. I don't want to I'm not your main person.
Kate, you'll always be my main person.
Thank you.
Okay, before we all start bawling, thanks for listening to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. Make sure you follow, like, subscribe, all the things. Follow us on Instagram. Kate is actually crying right now.
Oh, I think there's like I have a sty. I don't know if you can see it. I do have a sty in my eye though. It's my
Okay,
first one in my
excuses. But we'll see you next week with another case. I believe Kate is coming back for one more and then going back on maternity leave.
Yeah, you guys will hear my voice again next week, and then I may take a break. I might come back. I don't know. I might get another epidural.
I'm going with you next time.
Yeah, we'll do. Well, what if there was like spa days, but you could get epidurals?
Yeah, and I think you should be able to have like an elective coma for like a week.
Laughing gas, the whole shebang, shenine, whatever it is. I don't know.
All right, we'll be looking into that.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye. And canine dogs at the dumps, you know?